So we're going to look at a lot of different places right now. And I want you to think about, how do you think the water is interacting with the land in each of these pictures? Some of these pictures are from Belle Isle. In fact, this one is the beach at Belle Isle. This is the shoreline at Belle Isle. And then this is the interior of the island at Belle Isle. And then these pictures are from our area on the West Coast that's a faraway area. So I want you to look at and compare, how do you think the water is interacting with the land in each of these pictures? So take a minute, talk to your partner. So tell me about, who can tell me a little bit that talked about this picture? What do you think about how the water is interacting with the land in that particular picture?
We were saying over here, because we talked about how there seems to be some force. So Sue mentioned how the water is pounding on the land in the waterfall. Okay.
All right, so pounding, I like that word, pounding. What about this picture? Did anybody notice that picture? How is the water interacting with the land in that bottom picture?
So my partner said that she is from the West Coast, and they have a lot of problems on the West Coast with the waves hitting into the land, and so we talked about how the waves could affect the structure of the land in that bottom picture.
So the waves, so not just water moving, but actually the waves. And I like the way you said the waves were hitting the land. All right, and then what about the difference? So this was the West Coast. What about differences that you saw in the way that the water and the land were interacting on Belle Isle? What about this coastline picture? Any ideas about what you saw there? Yes?
Christy was saying that in that picture, the waves are coming in and probably kind of slowly eroding the shoreline, and we kind of characterized it as gentle.
So I heard you say a word, eroding. Can you give me a little bit more? Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that word?
Well, water tends to kind of change the shape of land over time and kind of eats away at it and sort of changes the shape and usually makes it smaller.
So you were saying that it's gently going, I want to make sure I'm saying hearing what you said. You said that it's gently going against the land and it's changing when you said eroding, you meant it was changing the shape or eating it away? Okay. All right. I like that, changing the shape, but it's gently changing the shape. And then what about, we'll do one more. What about this area in the interior here of Belle Isle? Any ideas about how the water's interacting with the land there?
Very similarly, this water seems to be very calm. So as it's moving through, I'm sure that there's some change over time, but if it's pulling or eroding any of the land, it's at a much slower pace than comparing it to the waterfall or the images on the West Coast.
So when we think about these different ways that land could be interacting with water, we want to think about how we can model this, how we can think about a model of this. And one type of model is called an analogy. An analogy is when you take something that's very different and compare it to something else. And there are features of it, parts of it that you think are very similar. So for example, we have 6 different pictures here that we want you to think about which of these pictures are an analogy for or give you an idea that's similar to the way that the land and the water might be interacting. So when you think about what you saw in those pictures and the ideas that we just discussed, are the land and the water interacting more like a broom sweeping up trash? Are the land and the water interacting more like a scraper scraping ice off of a window of a car? When the land and the water interact, do you think it's more like a billiard table or pool table and the way that the pool balls are interacting and bouncing off of each other and bouncing off of the table? Do you think that it's more like when we are trying to clean some cement and scrubbing? Or when land and water interact, is it more like sliding down a slide? Or our last picture, is it like when bricks are building something and we're putting bricks together? Which one of these pictures do you think is more like the way that water and land interact? So I want you to take a minute, think about it on your own, talk to your partner, and we're going to come up with a claim that the interaction between the land and the water is like And which of those pictures do you think it's like? Take a minute, talk to your partner. Okay, so let's think about what your ideas are. Did anybody think that the way that the land and the water interact was like a broom sweeping up trash? Why did you think so?
I mentioned that thinking about our water near us and thinking about the Detroit River and how we don't have a waterfall, we don't have rapids, and thinking about the movement of our water, I imagine or connected to sort of a sweeping along the sides of our land. So as the Detroit River is moving either past Belle Isle or past the Canadian or Detroit shores, I imagine a sort of sweeping away of that land because it's calmer waters.
Anybody think that it was more like the scraper scraping ice? Why did you think so?
I thought it was like the scraper because it was changing slowly over time, and it wasn't just, we did talk about the broom in a similar way, that we felt like it was that motion, but that sweeping was more all at once, and a big change quickly, whereas the scraper is more of small changes over time that lead to an overall change.
What about the billiard balls? Did anybody think that the water interacting with the land was like the pool balls?
So I did it first. That was my initial thought, but then I kept thinking, okay, but they're hitting into something and something's not changing. But clearly the land is changing. So that was the one that first caught my eye, but then I went to another one.
Okay.